This is the Acer XF270HU. It's a Freesync monitor that comes equipped with a 144Hz IPS display running at a resolution of 2560 by 1440. And it's much cheaper than its G-Sync brother, but is it worth buying? I set out over the last 2 weeks to find out. What's up guys, and welcome to this video. This video for me is quite an exciting one and hopefully is for you too. And the reason I say this is because both my channel and all the other channels out there that do similar things have been going a bit monitor crazy to reflect the amount of monitors that are being released every single week, day, month, and it's all gone a little bit crazy. This one though has something a little bit different up its sleeve, and that is actually price. Yes, Freesync monitors are cheaper than their G-Sync counterparts, but this is a monitor that is available for less than £500 that has 144Hz, IPS, 2560 by 1440 and adaptive sync in the form of Freesync. So for an AMD gamer, it's literally got everything out there you will need unless you want 4K, but as we've talked about before, wanting 4K isn't necessarily the best thing to do in this sort of moment in space. Anyway, this one is very closely related to its G-Sync brother that came out last year. You can find the full review of that somewhere around here, and that was a very good monitor, but it had one major flaw, and that was the fact that it just looked and felt a little bit cheap for something that was so expensive. The good news is that this one doesn't suffer from the same problem. Get it on your desk and it does a good job of looking fairly expensive. It's not up to the same level of specification in terms of build quality when it comes to the Asus ones though. Asus still have a little bit of a distance to go, but I would be happy to have this on my desk. The stand looks very nice, it's got all the adjustments you need. It doesn't really have swivel. I mean, it's a circular base, so you just kind of swivel the whole monitor, so you don't really need it, and at least for me this makes no difference. It's got a VESA mount, and it's pretty much got everything that you would need from a stand. And yes, like I've said, it doesn't quite compete with the likes of the Asus, but as we'll get to a little bit later, it's got something else up its sleeve that is pretty exciting, especially at this price. But moving on to the physical overview, the bezels themselves are very slim, not class leading, not as good as you get on the ROG Swifts, but to be honest, it's going to be more than good enough for pretty much everyone out there, even if you plan to be using this in a multiple monitor setup. So very good news there, and that doesn't stop when we look at the menus. The buttons on the front at the right hand side are physical buttons, which of course means they're great. Any sort of horrible tactile button that doesn't work is not very user friendly. These ones, they probably could be slightly better, but in all honesty, they work, they're physical buttons, and the menu system itself is very easy to navigate and has all the options I think you would need. And the main one that I tend to be using is the sRGB mode on monitors. This one you can select sRGB and then lower the brightness, which is ideal because for most people that's what I recommend you do if you don't want to spend the time calibrating the monitor, because you're pretty much going to get the best out of it in just a few clicks. And it has a very nice feature that is the same with most G-Sync and Freesync monitors these days, whereby if you are using this in Freesync mode, you can have a frame rate counter at the top right hand side of the monitor to let you know what frames per second you are receiving. And this also has the advantage of if you say accidentally go into windowed mode and for whatever reason Freesync isn't enabled, then it will tell you because your refresh rate will stay at 144Hz. And you'll know that something needs to change. So I'm actually pretty impressed, and genuinely I think Acer have done a cracking job of improving on their G-Sync model. Definitely a step in the right direction. To get this thing hooked up, make sure you use DisplayPort to get the most out of the monitor and have access to that 144Hz refresh rate at 1440p, as well as access to FreeSync technology. If you want to use something like a games console, HDMI is provided. If you want to use legacy connections, I believe this also has a DVI as well. But if you're using DVI on this monitor, well, it doesn't really make much sense unless you've got a laptop or something that only has DVI. So yeah, use the DisplayPort. Once you've got this thing hooked up and on your desk and powered on, I think you'll be quite pleased with the results. The lovely rich IPS panel means that colour accuracy is very, very good, and of all the IPS panels I've tested, it's definitely up there with some of the best. Very nice to see on a gaming monitor. If you want to use this for productivity or just general use, then of course that IPS panel makes just things nicer to look at, and that 1440p resolution as well is pretty much in the sweet spot. If you never do any gaming, it makes sense to go down the 4K 60Hz route, but as soon as you start gaming on this monitor, you are really going to get the best thing out of this monitor. And before I go into saying how good this thing is, with gaming, how smooth it is, I really want to make something very clear, and I think this should probably help you in determining how good this thing is. I have two setups at the moment. I have this studio setup here, which is where I film these videos, and then I almost have like a test setup because I work down in Portsmouth, so midweek I'll sort of be down there. And at the moment I'm using two ROG Swifts, and one of them is a 165Hz IPS panel, and it's pretty much the best gaming monitor you can buy. I come here, I've got a cheaper GPU, I've got a R9 Fury, and I've got this monitor, and in all honesty, I can't really tell that much of a difference in terms of smoothness and image quality between the two monitors. Yes, if I put them side to side, I'm sure that the superior panel is probably going to be in the ROG Swift, but the fact that it's not really much that noticeable, I think can only be a good thing for this monitor. And don't forget that this is around about £200–250 cheaper, so it's a very impressive feat. Talking about the gaming though, as soon as you get a first-person shooter booted up, so yes, it's the usual Call of Duty, because that's still what I'm playing at the moment, you're just greeted with really nice smooth frames per second. And if you keep this in the FreeSync range of 40 to 144 Hz, I'll say that again because it's really important, 40 and 144 Hz FreeSync range, then you're going to get a nice smooth experience that really is up there with some of the best. And if you're an AMD gamer, I genuinely think this is probably the way you should go, at least this or something very similar, because having a 1440p resolution is the sweet spot, and having a refresh rate of 144 Hz means that your games are allowed to be a lot smoother and feel a lot more responsive. So if you want to play something that's a bit more Twitch based, so something like Smite or any sort of MOBA game, you're also going to see a big benefit there as well. And even in some games that I don't personally think it makes as much of a difference, then something like Dirt Rally, the IPS panel means that colours pop and the whole panel looks really nice and rich. And while the overall look of the display isn't as good as the likes of the Acer ROG Swift, for most people I really don't think you're going to notice much of a difference, and I will guarantee that if you don't have a 144 Hz IPS panel, this is going to be a damn sight better than what you're probably using at the moment. And I just wasn't expecting this to be, maybe I just wasn't sort of thinking about it that much, but I was genuinely really impressed with how good this thing is. And the only problem really is if you've got an Nvidia card and then you want to come across and you use this, obviously you can't then use the FreeSync technology and you're still going to get some stutter and tearing in your games. But at least with this, you're not really paying any more for the FreeSync technology. Nvidia user could buy this monitor and be perfectly happy with it, whereas no AMD gamer in their right mind, unless they were planning to do an upgrade to an Nvidia card, should buy a G-Sync monitor, because you're paying around about £100 extra for that G-Sync premium that you won't be able to use. And so with that, it's time to wrap up this video. If you're a gamer, the best gaming experience out there in my opinion has to be on a monitor that has 100 Hz plus refresh rate, IPS or AHVA panels, adaptive sync technology in the form of FreeSync or G-Sync, as well as a resolution of 2560 by 1440 or the ultra-wide equivalent. And so when a monitor comes in at a very reasonable price with all of that, there's not really that much more you could ask for. And for me, the dream setup was probably actually going to have two monitors like this, one FreeSync and one G-Sync. And I think, for me, this is the monitor that I want in that setup. And it's available at such a good price and has all the features that you will probably want or need, that if you're an AMD gamer, for me, this is easily the monitor of choice, which is why it wins the Editor's Choice Award. And even if you're an Nvidia gamer, it still might make sense to go down this route. It saves yourself £100, has next to all the features that you'd need, and if you are planning on getting an AMD card a little bit later down the line, then of course you're going to be able to do that and unlock the full potential of the monitor. And don't forget that if you buy a G-Sync monitor, then you might feel locked in to the Nvidia way, and if an AMD card comes along that you want, you might be less inclined to buy it just because you've spent a load of money on a monitor. So thank you so much for checking out this review as always. A big thank you to Acer for getting this one out, this review sample, big thank you. And if you want to see more monitor reviews, there are so many, including the 2 ROG Swifts that I mentioned in this video, as well as a whole host of others. You can find the full monitor reviews playlist in the little eye, and that will take you to all the monitor reviews, which is probably the best place to go for monitor reviews, but I would say that because I made them. So thank you so much for checking out this video as always. Any questions? @PCcentric on Twitter is the place to go. And even if you don't have any questions, @PCcentric, follow @PCcentric, I'll say it again, @PCcentric on Twitter, and then you can be able to follow the day-to-day antics of me. Wouldn't that be lovely? But in all seriousness, thank you so much for checking out this video. Please hit that like button if you liked it, because, yep, you guessed it, it lets other people know it's a video worth watching. How many people am I putting off with these silly antics that I'm doing at the end of the video? Sorry, basically, I'm so sorry, and it's probably time to end the video. So on that, thank you so much for checking out this video as always, and I'll see you in the next one.